Biden just came out with a brand new, fresh effort to try and persuade Congress to take steps to overhaul the US tax code to squeeze more tax out from the largest and most profitable companies and the richest individuals as well, in what is widely being regarded as a billionaire tax. Now, this is understandably getting a lot of news. This isn't the first time this sort of thing has been considered or even put forward, but as we know, it's never really amounted to much in the past, and the big question right now that's on everyone's mind is, will this actually pass? Will it go into law? Will it die long before that point? And if it does pass, what will the consequences be, and are they all good? So that is what we're going to discuss today, starting off with exactly what the news is. So the Treasury Department released what they call the Green Book, which details plans for a $2.5 trillion tax hike targeting big successful companies and very wealthy people and families. In this plan is sort of a modified wealth tax and an end to some tax breaks that some wealthy institutions like investment funds benefit from hugely. There was also the $1.5 trillion of tax hikes from Biden's Build Back Better plan that are left out of this bill, but of course, that first set of hikes never got through the Senate and is still stuck in gridlock basically. Now, what this plan really is simply a book that Biden can point to when people ask, how will you pay for your new projects? Now, some specifics of it include an increase to tax rates on capital gains, corporate profits, and individual earnings as well. With these tax hikes, Biden is now claiming that the planned investments to go alongside this are fully paid for, which is a bit of political tooling that every politician loves, and to make it even better, it's paid for by taxing the evil billionaires. Now, what is this specific tax that would target these billionaires? Well, it would be a minimum tax of 20% on unrealized gains of the very, very wealthy, the billionaires, probably on anyone worth more than $100 million. It's been a hot topic for a while now, and it's very popular in progressive circles, and Biden claimed that he would target this sort of thing during the election, but he just sort of ignored it for the first 2 years of his tenure, until right now as he tries to drum up support for this. Now, it is clear, in my opinion at least, that most billionaires pay practically no taxes, especially in comparison to their wealth, and this is very frustrating to most people. Simply put, it's because of the way our tax codes work. We tax on income or realizing gains, getting paid or selling a stock for a profit, as opposed to just owning wealth in the first place. Now, wealth taxes have existed. In ancient Rome, for example, a wealth tax was pretty much the only tax they had, and it ran the entire government and even ran social programs like the grain dole. But in recent decades, or actually the last century or so, wealth taxes have been very unpopular. Now, the big problem with this bill is that it probably just won't work, even if it is well-intentioned. We saw the impact on Tesla's share price as Elon Musk sold 10% of his shares last year, and the stock lost, I think, about 10 or 15% of its value as he sold off shares. Now, if every billionaire and every wealthy person in the world had to do the same thing, sell off assets in order to pay 20% of their net worth in taxes, the entire market would collapse, pretty much without a doubt. It would also be pretty difficult to determine how much someone should actually pay. Say you estimate that I own $1 billion of stock, so I'm to be taxed $200 million, and I start selling my shares to pay that tax, but now the share price has dropped in half, so I'm only worth $500 million. Do I still owe taxes on that original amount or on the realized amount? If it's on the original amount, then I'm essentially being taxed 70% of my wealth, and I'll be very unhappy. If it's on the realized amount, then we have a situation similar to before, where everything is based on realized gains instead of paper profits. These sort of details and intricacies are not easy to work out. It's very complicated, and there would absolutely be loads of teething problems should this bill come to fruition. We also have the fact that markets do still exist in part to allow companies to raise capital to finance growth. But if their share prices are collapsing as their founders and shareholders have to sell to pay taxes, then maybe they're not able to raise capital. And that's not always a bad thing, but for companies that might be cash flow negative or they just had a really bad couple of years like GameStop or AMC, there's a fair chance that these tax rules literally bankrupt companies, in which case thousands of people lose their jobs, billions of dollars of wealth is destroyed, and the government doesn't even get all of its new taxes. Now, another problem with this idea is that over the course of 10 years, it will only raise $300 billion for the US government, which is a pathetic amount, and not even enough to cover the increases in the military budget that Biden is pushing for this year alone. At this point, a lot of people will be thinking, why even bother with this, especially if it still has the potential to be so bad for the economy and markets. It also seems that quite a lot of people don't realize how little wealth billionaires actually hold in comparison to how much governments spend, and that's because we think of the wealth of billionaires in comparison to the wealth of normal people, of which there is a huge discrepancy, but the wealth of billionaires compared to the debt or the spending of the US government is huge in the opposite direction. If you took all of the wealth of Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, and 20 other of the richest billionaires, 100% of it, and destroyed all of the companies they created in the process, you wouldn't even fund the US government for a single year. In my opinion, at that point, it's probably better to just spend that effort to reduce the wastefulness of the US government as opposed to maybe political jabs at billionaires like this. Now, the problems here just keep mounting up though, and this time it's with regards to capital flight, which is a very real thing and a major problem. If you tax these billionaires too much, they will simply leave the US, and then you don't have the ability to tax them at all. Now, this is a balancing act. There is no right answer here, but there are many wrong answers. If you try to tax all of Elon's wealth, for instance, there is a 99% chance that he would simply pack up and leave, move to maybe Dubai or Singapore. I don't know where, but he would leave. The exact same thing can be said for companies as well. Google have a huge presence in the US, an incredible campus bigger than the Pentagon, and of course they don't want to abandon that and have to move tens of thousands of employees overseas to a new location. But if they work out that it costs them $200 billion to move locations, to move out of the US, and they're being threatened with $300 billion of taxes, then they would move. That's the plain simple truth, because they are a business. Of course, in reality, decisions like this aren't made in an instant, and thousands of different companies would come to thousands of different conclusions regarding costs and benefits, but the fact remains that capital flight is very real. France saw it for 2 decades as they tried to tax their millionaires and ended up just making them all move out of the country. Now, the US has more leeway here because it is such an incredibly developed economy and it has the largest and best talent pool and 100 other reasons as well, but tax companies or billionaires too much and they will simply leave. Now, I personally don't think that this tax alone is enough to convince all billionaires to leave if it were to pass, but it would push some out, and it would also set a precedent to tax them again based on their wealth, and again, and at that point, the exodus would really start to kick off. Now, finally, the biggest and most important issue with this idea that Biden is pushing is the simple fact that it will not pass. It is only supported by the radicals of the Democrats, not the moderates, and even if it had near unanimous support from the Democrats as a whole, the margins here to get a bill passed like this are razor thin, and it would probably fail just as Biden's Build Back Better plan failed as well. Now, Biden knows this, his administration knows this, everyone knows this, so why are they bothering to even put it forward? Well, plainly because it's good press, and Biden's approval ratings are very poor and the midterms are coming up, so he wants all of the help he can get. He knows this plan won't actually go into force, so he doesn't care about its shortcomings or whether or not it's actually effective. He just wants people to talk about his attempt to finally make the billionaires pay their fair share. Will this plan work? Personally, I doubt it, because ultimately it's inflation that is killing the middle and the working classes of America, and this does nothing to hide that reality, even though the Democrats have been trying extremely hard to shift the blame over to the wealthy of the US, to Russia, and to pretend that their own actions didn't cause inflation, which is, of course, untrue. Now, if you do support this action in general to tax billionaires more, like I do, well, I don't think you should support this bill, because it's not about billionaires and it's not about taxing them effectively and efficiently. It's about Biden's approval ratings, and throwing these proposals up into the air only to be shot down a single second later is not going to drive any change in the long run. If you enjoyed this video, then make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to bless the YouTube algorithm. If you want more content like this, then check out our Patreon and join our community of investors. You get access to our Discord, loads of exclusive content like insight into my portfolio, and buy and sell alerts for all my own investments. There's a link in the description to masterworks.io, a site that allows you to buy fractional shares of art from world-famous artists like Banksy, which can be a great way to diversify your portfolio with non-market correlated assets. It's completely free to sign up, so if that sounds interesting, if you want to protect your portfolio against inflation, then make sure to check it out. There's also a link in the description to BlockFi, which will give you up to $250 in free Bitcoin when you use it. You can also get 9% interest on stablecoins like USDC, which is a far higher rate than you get from any savings account these days. Just make sure not to use Tether. Thanks for watching, stay stoic. Until next time.